Okay, I just finished this book, to Edwards. What's the subtitle? Can't read it backwards. Peter Hoff is the author, and how King Edward VII and Foreign Secretary Sir Edward Grey fomented the First World War. And this is a really fascinating book published by Trine Day, who Chris Milligan, he was going to publish a book by me 10 years ago. Let's see. Basically, there's all these new documents that prove that Great Britain essentially was afraid that Germany would dominate Europe and England. And so they essentially conspired with France and Russia to force Germany into the World War I. And I always wondered, because you hear about there was an assassination in Serbia, and then all of a sudden there's World War. And it just never made much sense to me, how the two could be connected that directly. And so then you learn, well, really Russia was trying to control the Straits of Constantinople into the Black Sea. And of course that's still going on today, right? With the Odessa Ukraine and so anyway, this is this reminds me of when Gurdjieff was he was born in that area, Georgia, Armenia. There was debate whether he's really Armenian or is he, Georgian or Russian or but essentially, he's talking about the mechanical mentality that's taken over. And when he went to India, he saw the animal sacrifices and these huge bloodbaths of animals that they've been protesting that in Nepal also recently, trying to stop these huge animal sacrifice. And then there's the issue of human sacrifice and war. War is essentially, human sacrifice, because what this book really documents is how the wars of Europe were really basically because the royalty were having squabbles, and then they would have interpersonal squabbles and be offended at their various gatherings, their soirees, and since they were royalty, then they would launch their militaries against each other. And but what's not discussed in this book is that at the time Germany was using slave labor from Armenia. Well, Turkey was using genocide against Armenia to build a railroad for Germany. And so of course the British Empire didn't want the German Empire to develop. And this author, Peter Hoff, he does a really good job saying that, well, essentially, England, was the real instigator of World War One. First, they undermined the treaty that Germany had in Morocco, and I didn't, I went to Morocco, and this is kind of wild to share, but my one it's all okay. All I can say is that I met somebody who worked as a male prostitute for Germans going to Morocco, German male tourists, sex tourists, and I didn't know. I always kind of wondered, well, why Germans? I didn't realize that Germany previously had an imperial interest in Morocco, and that was part of the initiation of World War One. Is that France broke. See, basically, by France aligning with Russia and England, then they felt they had the ability to undermine their previous. They're supposed to negotiate with Germany for any. So you basically have the Western powers are squabbling over the rest of the planet. Who gets what. And there's been a sometimes the Western elite will then they talk about the white man's burden, which is basically claiming that imperialism doesn't pay. There's no money in it. It's just a they're trying to help the civilizing mission, as it's called. That it's really this great sacrifice. They're not exploiting labor. They're they're not. So this book proves that that's not true. That in fact they're obviously fighting amongst themselves over the spoils of the rest of the world. And of course this led to the creation of the Federal Reserve in the U.S. and with the robber barons. I mean, you have this essentially World War One. The U.S. After that became the dominant world power, and solidified it. After World War II, but it was already happening. For example, when the U.S. invaded Philippines, and the U.S. invasion of the Philippines ended up killing 250,000 Filipinos, and it's well documented. Like, I have a book. I think I still have that book. I should still have it. The academics have documented that the elite at the time, they were quote unquote investing in the Philippines, but the U.S. were afraid that Germany would conquer the Philippines, from Spain, if the U.S. didn't do it first. So essentially, it's all just the same process of this. When you think of how banking arose, it was from the kings needing to borrow money to pay for soldiers and weapons, and so that kings could try to expand their territory. And now it's gotten to the point where the kings are the CEOs of the like with the Federal Reserve, the monetary system is privatized, so that if you think about it, the kings are basically just symbolic. And that this is another key point of this book, is that at this time in World War I, the king was not supposed to be involved in politics, but this proves that he insisted to the government, to Sir Edward Grey, who was like the foreign secretary. He insisted that England had to go to war, that there was no way to stop it. And even though, this is right after the assassination in Serbia. And that goes back to Austria. Another fascinating thing with the Austrian Empire is that I talk about this in my 2012 book, is that the nationalist movements that tried to, they were breaking away from the Austrian Empire, was directly based on literacy, because in order to become a nation, you had to write down your language. You had to make your language a written language to make it like a legitimate language. And so there's very much this connection between left brain dominance and then an external territorial boundary in geography for a nation state, because you have to this goes back to farming, and with the rectilinear wheat fields that were used to divide property, and the mathematics that were used to do that. And if you look at the very original writing, the oldest documented writing is in Sumeria and in Egypt. And it's either, ideograms or hieroglyphics. And this is back like around 2500 BCE or 3000 BCE. So, 5,000 years ago. And at first it's all based on, just trading. Like it's all government trading, taxes, the price of things. So it's really tied to the number system also. The writing, the development of writing, and of farming, the development of farming, and the storing of wealth and hoarding wealth, and then around 1200 BCE is when iron became more valuable than silver, because you could make weapons, with iron. And so the silver was used as part of the lunar calendar for the goddess worship. so what the radical anthropologists point out is that worldwide, the males, they, in every culture, they acknowledge that they have to steal power from the females, and they have to keep the females down in order to maintain their power. And this is the power it's not even talked about anymore, but it's the psychic lunar power that's directly tied to the lunar control of water on Earth. And the water controls the growth of life on Earth, because water, it's proven to be a macro quantum molecule. So as water expands, when it gets cold, then it increases its structure as a crystal, and this is called negative entropy. And this is what Victor Schauberger figured out when he saw trout going up against the current. They would go up the middle of the stream because the middle is the coldest, and it's closest to 4 degrees Celsius, where water's the densest. And so the pressure of the water when it's cold, it's based on energy intensity instead of density, because it's a macro quantum molecule. And so this is the hidden, what they call the EZ water, or the fourth state of water. So that the easy water is because the water is being separated into the protons and the electrons, and when it does that, it creates virtual photons, and the virtual photons then, as Richard Feynman documented, that's the source of the magnetic field, but it's from reverse time. So the magnetic field is actually a reverse time power. And this is what the Wan Qi is, because it's a non-local reverse time magnetic power. And this is what actually guides life from the future through the water cycle. And so it enables psychic powers based on precognition as a reverse time resonance with the source of life itself. And this is what humans developed as the core of their culture through the what's called the Elan bull dance at the first menstruation of the female, in synchronization with the lunar cycle. So the females are synchronized as a group. And by synchronizing as a group, then that solidarity as a psychic power, a group psychic power, is what maintains peace, so that the humans as a group can then cooperate. And this is what enabled humans to thrive and spread around the planet and adapt to different climates, in contrast to Neanderthals and other hominins. So this all developed since the last in the last 100,000 years, since the last ice age, really. The previous Professor William Calvin, he talks about when we left the rainforest originally, like 2 to 3 million years ago. this was based on the natural ice age cycles of the torque of the Earth. The Milankovitch cycle, which is the precession of the equinoxes. So there's this backwards wobble to the Earth. And our ancient cultures, when they first developed the solar calendar with precision, they also documented this backwards wobble to the Earth, which is like it's 20,000 years for each segment of the circle. I think each segment is like 2,000 years. And that's like the age of Pisces or the age of Aquarius. That's what that refers to when they sing about that in 1960s rock songs. This is I'm not going to sing like that, but the point being that this magnetic Wan-Chi energy is based on the splitting of the water that Dr. Andrija Puharich figured out. He called it the psi plasma, and it's a reverse time force that's actually the Schumann resonance at the Earth, the ELF frequency. So it's the 7.8 hertz, and so when we're barefoot on Earth, then the water cycle, we're resonating with this water cycle, the energy that's naturally anti-gravitational, and it's what drives the creation of life on Earth. And so this is it's also inherently asymmetric, so it's a eternal flowing, and it goes back to the antimatter quark in the proton, the gluon's force of the proton. So even though all matter is made of light, the light will store this magnetic information, just like a magnetic, cassette tape, if anybody can remember what those are, or a magnetic disc, like the old floppy disk, or an old disk drive and a hard drive in a computer. It's based on the actual magnetic storage, and so the magnetic storage is actually information in the fifth dimension as the relativistic mass of the virtual photons. And through, just like in a wormhole, in a black hole, white hole, And this is why light has emotions, like as a ghost, when our ghost leaves our body, it's based on the frequency of the light, because the emotions they're electrochemical blockages in the organs of the body, because the organs store up the charge based on the vagus nerve and the sympathetic nervous system and the stress and the diet, and so the purification of the body is based on all matter originating from light, but that light itself has this relativistic mass that stores the emotional charge of the light. And this is the secret meaning of the emotion of color. And Qigong Master Jim Nance has been talking about this a lot in his class, about the feeling of color, the emotional meaning of color. And then this is why ghosts have to be healed. The energy masters, they also heal the ghosts. Like when we leave our body, we still need healing. even as a ghost, by the spiritual masters. And so this is what Gurdjieff was hinting at, was that when we entered into World War I, it was like this, lowering of the frequency of, not just the frequency, but the harmonic, ancient secret of healing as life on Earth, as we entered into the Iron Age, and this whole idea of trying to contain infinity as based on the symmetry, and how that goes against this flowing complementary opposites that he called the law of three. And so I'm just going to leave it at that, and thanks for your time.